Hey everybody, this is episode 27 of Eat, Drink, Write, an Urban Fantasy Whiteboard. And today we are going to be talking about foreshadowing, which is pretty exciting, I think.
Yeah.
So first, how was your week?
It was all right. It's a lot busier now with getting back into science and everything. So turns out I do remember how to grow my cells, so that's good. Let's see, what else did I do? I rearranged my office space back here behind me if you're watching the video, because it just felt like super cluttered, and also I was having a down day and I just needed like a project to do. So I went and rearranged it, and I hung up one of my whiteboards that I use for writing, and so I have it all set up and everything like that to go and write in there and have like my own office space to work in and feel comfortable in and that kind of thing. But that's pretty much it. Oh, I did do some writing. I wrote 1,000 words on Aiden, but that's all I got done.
Okay.
But yeah, but that
Making a writing space is huge. I mean, that is huge.
Because yeah, it's got my double door windows. Sorry, it's got my double door windows in there. So like, I like having the outside space that I can look at and everything.
Yeah, I mean that's half the battle of writing, is having a space where you feel safe and good to do it in.
Yeah.
So that's pretty awesome. I did a little bit of editing. I got to chapter 5. I think I've told you all I'm doing my very first book ever. And I'm going through each chapter and I'm making notes of what's going on, what the action is, what the inciting incident is, what it is I'm trying to get across. And I got to chapter 5. That it is horrible.
Like chapter 5 specifically is awful?
Yes.
Oh.
It's almost like my own notes on what the religions of the world are and what the different magics are. She just tells it all out there. It's just verbal vomit within her head. It's just
I don't remember that.
awful. So I've got to come up with a way to get that information across that's not so painful.
Yeah, fair enough. I don't remember it being that way, but I think I read it before I ever started writing, so that would make sense.
Oh gosh, it's cringeworthy. But I did do that. I got 3 ring notebooks. I like to do my physical notebooks, so I actually made one, started one for my twin saga.
Nice.
Got pictures of all the actors and models and things that I found on the internet for the characters, just to get it into my head who they are. Yeah. So I'm getting there. It's just very painful a process at this point. Excited about the 4th of July. We're filming this on Friday, the July 3rd. So here in the USA, it's a big day for us. So trying to figure out things to do for our 14-year-old. The poor thing, she's been in this house since February.
Right.
I mean, bless her heart. I'm finally feeling much better. Today is my last day of quarantine. Good. Never did get my results back yet, but the voicemail was finally open where I could actually leave a voicemail. So I've left a voicemail, so hopefully they'll tell me whether I was positive or not.
Right.
But for the 4th of July, we're going to be using that box that we got for Dad last year for Father's Day. You remember that box?
The pig roaster thing?
Yes.
Yeah.
The Lakaja or Lakaha China box, they call it.
Yeah.
So we've got a big butt that we're going to do and some ribs.
Oh, I'm so jealous. I want to come home. I'm ready to come home.
I want you all home too. It's not right. But then the next weekend after that, we'll be on vacation together. So
I'm very excited about
finally get to see each other.
Yes.
And then the other thing that we're having to do this week is figure out whether we're going to have Riley, our 14-year-old, do the digital 100% school in the fall.
Is there like a deadline on that or something?
Yeah, July 9th, we got to turn that in by. And you have a choice to do either all in person or all digital. There is no in between. And you can't change your mind in the middle of the semester. So whatever you pick is going to take you all the way through December.
Yeah, I imagine. I mean, it's hard to say because, I mean, you could put her in school and then like they may end up closing again just with the way the virus is going here.
Yeah, Gwinnett County, where we are, is the hot spot in Georgia right now. We've got more cases than any other county in the state.
Yeah.
Yeet,
So.
yeet off.
Woo! Yeah, no, it's we're breaking records every day here in Athens too. So every day it's like, oh, we're higher than yesterday. Oh, we're higher than yesterday. So I wouldn't be surprised if schools like actually closed down, but I also wouldn't be surprised if kept them open. So, but not to get political on the podcast or whatever.
Right.
But yeah.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. I would prefer that she stay home and do it digitally 100% for the first semester. But if I've had it, if that's what I have, then she's been exposed to it and probably has been asymptomatic. So she's probably safe. But we don't know because I can't get my freaking results.
That's true. Yeah, I don't know. We don't know that much about antibodies either. So a lot of the time the tests are very unreliable. And so even if you have antibodies, it doesn't necessarily mean, that you're safe from contracting the virus. And we just don't know enough about it just because it's a novel virus. So it's hard to say. Like either way, I think it's just safer to not be in public as much as possible.
Especially in schools, you're going to crowd all those kids into little tiny classrooms and not require masks.
Right.
I don't get it. So anyway, this week has been all about that. Fair. What are you eating and drinking today?
So I was going to eat an apple and peanut butter, and then I decided I shouldn't probably eat that while we're talking because the crunch would be possibly very annoying. So that was the plan. But I am drinking, it's called Green Man tea from the Peacock Tea Room. It's amazing. I thought it was going to be just like an average green tea. And it has, I think, like a bunch of dried fruits in it that the flavor of that comes into the green tea too. So it's like sweet. And then I put honey in it because I love honey and green tea, but I didn't realize that the fruit would also make it sweet. So it's a little too sweet for me. And next time I wouldn't put honey in it. But it's delicious. It's great.
I love that name too. He's got the coolest names for his blends.
Yeah, he
Green
does.
Man. I mean, all kind of Renaissance festival-y because that's where he has always been selling his stuff. But he's now got that online store too.
Yeah.
I am celebrating the end of quarantine, so I am drinking a Salty Dog Keto style. So it's the bubbly grapefruit, which is just the sparkling water with grapefruit and vodka. And then a little bit of lime, and then I've got salt around the rim.
That's lovely.
And I'm eating, for those watching, you can see it's bacon wrapped beef tenderloins.
Those look so good.
They smell really good too.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, really, really yummy. So
I'm ready to start coming home for these podcasts again. I miss the food.
I can't wait for that because I would like to sit out on the deck, have this up on the TV outside, and then us just sit in our comfortable rocking chairs out there and just chat about writing. And I can't wait for that to happen.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Soon. Yeah. And y'all, we're going to do an episode from vacation up in the mountains in North Carolina.
Yes.
So hopefully the deck out there has a view that is just gorgeous in the pictures. So we're hoping to be able to put the camera behind us, have us sit on the deck and have it overlooking the mountains. So I'm looking forward to that. Don't know what the topic will be yet. We haven't decided, but today's topic is foreshadowing. So why don't you go ahead and jumpstart us on that?
Okie dokie. So what is foreshadowing? Well, first of all, the most important definition. It's one of my favorite things about the craft of writing. I love it. I think it allows, a writer to really get into what they're trying to get across in their works and that kind of thing. So what is it? It's when a writer gives an advanced hint of what is to come later in the story. And I think there's just so much you can do with it. There's endless possibilities. You can foreshadow a betrayal, and potentially we could do other episodes on this as well.
That's true.
Foreshadow a potential love, foreshadow a death, and that kind of thing. So what's the point of it? It helps to build dramatic tension and suspense throughout a story. It makes your reader want to makes them wonder what's going to happen next and keeps them turning the pages. They're going to want to keep reading because they already have this hint of what's going to happen.
Yeah, it makes them curious.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's super important in most stories. You want your reader to be curious.
Yeah.
It's a great tool to prepare your reader emotionally for big reveals, like big twists at the end of stories and that kind of thing. it's a really good way to get your reader thinking like, oh, something big is coming. Don't quite know what, but you can kind of tell and kind of get in your reader's head, hey, there's something coming. Be ready for this.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
It does. It helps develop your reader's expectations. I mean, that's one of my favorite things about reading is these little clues that you get. And I'm like, I know something, this means something. What's it going to be? And it makes me excited to keep turning the pages.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
One of my favorite series, the Fever series,
Mhm.
in one of her books, all of the chapter titles were song titles, or song lyrics or something like that. And it ended up being this whole foreshadowing thing about what the monster was and what it was doing. And so by the time you get like, I think I was 3/4 of the way through the book and I was like, oh my God, this is what this means. And I remember like coming upstairs and like walking into your room and being like, oh my God, and you hadn't read it yet. And so like, and you were like, what? And I was like, this book. And you were like, okay. And I was like, she did the foreshadowing beautifully.
Yeah, I think all of her books have that theme running through it because of how the whole series arc went.
Yeah, I think
I'll
so
have
too.
to go and look at every chapter title from all the books all the way through.
I don't remember if she did chapter titles for all of them.
I don't know. She's brilliant though. She
Yeah.
absolutely is brilliant. I urge everybody to go read her and study her, and you will learn a lot from her about how to do all this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the Fever series by Karen Marie Moaning, because I don't remember if I said her name.
I don't know if you did either.
Yeah. Well, we talk about her all the time on this podcast. So
we do.
Okay. So yeah, what are some types of foreshadowing? So there's direct foreshadowing, which is the story openly suggests an impending problem. So like it directly tells the reader, hey, this is coming up. So like, you know, it's often given through dialogue. Characters will say something that is like, oh, that's about to happen. Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
An example would be like, you know, somebody giving a prophecy of what's to come. And that's just like a very blatant, direct one. Yeah.
That's what I was thinking of too, are those high fantasies, especially that, you know, it's a prophecy, which in my twin saga, it's all about a prophecy about everything that has happened. So
right.
I'm going to have fun going back in and planting little seeds about the foreshadowing pieces. I'm excited about that.
Absolutely. Like I said, that's like one of my favorite things to do. Like I finish a story and then I'm like, oh my gosh, I had this end and I can go back and put all this stuff in.
Yeah.
So another type is indirect foreshadowing. And that's where the story kind of hints at an outcome and leaving like subtle clues throughout the story. And the key word there is subtle. You don't want to have it be overly obvious if you're using this type of foreshadowing. And so, you know, readers don't often understand the meaning of these clues sorry guys, I'm like thinking faster than I can talk. Readers don't often understand the meaning of the clues given to them until the end or until it's revealed what the clues are about. So for example, like Luke Skywalker sees his own face behind Darth Vader's mask, and you know the viewer is like, okay, that's interesting, it's kind of weird, whatever, and then we learn that Darth Vader is actually his father.
Yeah, because and that one we think, oh, he's, you know, fighting within himself about the evil that he thinks might be inside of himself and not living up to, you know, but we didn't realize that clue meant something else entirely.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
So
you had some stuff there. Yeah.
I did. You know, so actually, those can also be red herrings.
Mm-hmm.
Like it works too for us to think that Luke is having this inner conflict with his own demons, and then even when, you know, which is a red herring if that's what the writer was trying to lead us down, because it still works at the end when it turns out that Vader is his dad. It all works and we're not disappointed and we're not pissed off.
Right.
I came across something called Chekhovs Gun. Anton Chekhov is a writer who we actually have a quote on our website from him about showing versus telling.
Yeah.
You know, don't tell me that the moon is shining, show me the glint of light on the glass or something like that. Anyway, that's on our website. It's one of my favorite quotes. But he has something that has come to be known as Chekhov's gun. nothing in your story should be decoration. If you introduce a gun in your story, you need to shoot it at some point.
Absolutely.
So yeah, so when you're foreshadowing, don't do cheap tricks and leave them off and never, that's not good writing. You need to have a point for everything that's in there. If it's a red herring, you still need to, like with Luke, it worked that we thought that it was his inner demons that are making him see himself in Darth Vader and that kind of thing. That works. So don't just make it this random piece of something and never tie it up.
Yeah, so, absolutely. Yeah. Cool. So how can I use this in my writing? You can use it in dialogue. So like jokes or offhand comments can reveal information about a character, whether it's your main character or your side characters or whatever, while also hinting at an event that's to come involving that character. So, any joke where it's like, oh yeah, or an offhand comment where it's like, oh, you'll get yours or something like that. That's automatically foreshadowing, like something, he's got something planned. Something's going to go down with this character because he's obviously bitter or something.
Like we had said in one of our shows, gosh, the thought just went out of my head. I've had a quarter of this drink, but I haven't had drinks in a long time because I've been so sick. So I guess it's hitting me fast. What was I going to say? Something about, well, I don't know. It's gone. So move on.
All right. Fair enough. The same can be said for something that's left unsaid by a character. So if you expect a character to react to something in a certain way and they don't, or they don't respond in some way, then that's also giving you kind of like a hint of, oh, I wonder why he didn't bring up this or something like that. Yeah. So another thing that you can use is the title of your story, or even like we were talking about earlier, the title of your chapters, to kind of get across foreshadowing. And for, the example I have here is Edgar Allan Poe's The Fall of the House of Usher. So the House of Usher is going to fall. Right. And the story's about it, but you don't know how it falls.
Right.
And I feel like that's very like direct, very, I'm going to hit you over the head with this foreshadowing, this happens kind of thing.
Yeah.
Which can work. So, and then you can also use your setting. So I actually have found that I use this one a lot without consciously thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's because it gets used so often in stories anyway. And that's, you're using your atmosphere or places, your general setting as a good way to get across foreshadowing. And that's like, things like weather. So it's rainy and stormy and you're like, well, obviously something bad is going.
There's, the famous, there's a storm coming, that sentence is always used of impending doom, some kind of foreshadowing.
Right. I mean, think of like the tagline for Game of Thrones, which is winter is coming. That is just like something you're like, oh, okay, well, winter's coming. It's going to get here and something's going to happen.
Yeah. It's not going to be what we normally think of as winter, well, here in Georgia, it's not the same as a lot of other people that are listening to this, but it's something bad or forbidding is coming, foreboding.
Yes.
Well, I'm not going to talk anymore.
No, maybe you should talk more.
It might be entertaining. I don't know.
But yeah, likewise, you can use places like graveyards or abandoned buildings to also are you having issues there? For those of you who are not watching the video, she just spilled her drink all over herself. It's a grand time. But yeah, you can use graveyards and abandoned buildings as places to foreshadow something coming up, like a death or something like that. Or I like the idea of using an abandoned building and like having your character think about it and like that kind of thing. And eventually they are abandoned by their friends or by someone they love or that kind of thing.
Yeah.
You can also use literary devices. So like metaphors and similes, you can use like comparisons of characters, items, emotions, like all that kind of stuff. And the example I have here, and I didn't have like a specific one, it's just like comparing a character to someone in a fairy tale. So like if you think about the plot of the fairy tale you're using and like what lesson it's kind of trying to get across, if you compare your main character to a character in that fairy tale, it automatically creates that foreshadowing of, oh, maybe this will have the same outcome as that fairy tale or something like that.
Yeah.
Another thing you can use is character traits. So using appearance and mechanisms, mannerisms. So
Hey, you're drinking tea, man. So
maybe the fruit is like fermented, and I'm just.
Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, appearance and mannerisms. These can hint at a character's motives and intentions, I think, really, really well. Like, think of a character who dresses in all black. That's typically like that's the bad guy, the black hat,
Right.
Versus white hat kind of thing. That automatically gives you a sense of what that character is about and can kind of tell you what they might be like in the future of your story. So your main character's like curiosity about another's clothes is a good way to get that across. So like if there is an antagonist that's wearing something weird and you're like, that's very interesting, that's a weird thing to wear, that's going to leave your reader going, why do we care? And then it'll come back around in the end when you tie it all together. So I was thinking, like, when I read, I know that things are often mentioned only because they're important. So like that same kind of idea, if somebody describes that guy's black shirt for some specific reason, I'm going to be like, why do we care about his black shirt? There's going to be something going on here. Hopefully, assuming that it gets tied back in.
Yeah.
Right. And then so next I have tips on like how to actually put this in your writing.
Okay.
Those are ways to like use it in your writing, and like, you can use metaphors and similes, but like, what are some tips for actually doing that and incorporating it? You can plan your story. So this doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be a plotter, I don't think, because I know that you're not a plotter, you're more of a pantser, right?
Mm-hmm.
But an outline does help. I think you can, like, if you know the ending of your story, like, I think that probably helps like a ton to be able to go back and not even just go back, but to, while you're writing, think about things to put into your story as writing.
I usually know the ending, but I don't always know how it's gonna get there.
Right.
So for me, it is harder to foreshadow until after I've finished that first draft.
Yeah, which I think is perfectly fine too. Like, I am also very much the same way. I go back and foreshadow and add foreshadowing, even though I am a plotter. Like, I have a general idea of how my story ends and how it gets there, but I can still like go back and be like, oh, this would actually be a great place to add in a little detail like the leather or what this guy was wearing or something like that. So you had a little line there.
Turn the page. And it goes hand in hand with plot development. So in the book that I'm editing now, for me, I think it is more of an editing tool as opposed to plot development at the first draft.
Right.
Because I'm not conscious enough of it yet until I have that epiphany that I always talk about at the end, where it all comes together, and then I'm like, okay, now I know, and so now I can go back in and put these little foreshadowing nuggets in there that are going to keep my reader going forward. But if you are better at planning than I am, then you can plan in those nuggets, and it can help you at the plotting development stage to help develop your plot.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Another thing is plant the seeds of foreshadowing as early as possible. Like, get them into your story quickly. This helps to like satisfy your reader by the end whenever you do like get to that point, that epiphany point, the climax probably point, and tie it all together.
I've seen where they went out of my head again.
That drink is dangerous.
Wow. Yeah, it's been over 2 weeks because I wasn't feeling well before I even went to get tested. So not that I mean 2 weeks doesn't sound that long, but to be on keto, number one.
Yes.
And which you get affected by alcohol a whole lot quicker on keto, and then to go this long without having even a glass of wine or whatever.
Yeah.
It's hitting me very, very nicely. I do want to point out that you have to give all the relevant information to your reader. Like when we talked about mystery, adding mystery in, you can't just say, oh, this is the end, and by the way, you didn't know about this guy over here.
Right.
You cannot do that to your reader. You sometimes you don't want them to notice it, the same as we talked about in our mystery, that book. And we mentioned the book in the midst of all these other things, but you've got to give them the pieces so they can then go back and say, oh, that's what that was for. You don't trick them.
Yeah.
There's nothing more unsatisfying, I guess is the right word, than to have your writer trick you at the end, and you're like, that's just stupid.
Absolutely. I love books that, the ending shocks me and I don't really see it coming, but I can go back and be like, oh my God, like, here are the breadcrumbs. I understand where this came from, even though I didn't see it before.
Patricia Briggs in the Mercy one, where Mercy is over in Europe. I can't remember what country.
Oh, Prague.
Yes.
She was in Prague. Yeah.
That one was absolutely brilliant. And I got to the end and I'm like, oh, what? And then I had to go back and reread, and I'm like, my God, it was all there all the way through.
That was
absolutely
amazing.
Brilliant.
That one, I mean, there's foreshadowing of that even in earlier books if you know what to look for.
Right.
It's incredible. She did an incredible job with that. I love her. I love her so much.
Something else. She is another one that you all should study.
Absolutely.
I wish I could remember what the other thing I was going to say is. Maybe.
Yeah, you had something in mind. Okay. Yeah, so you want to plant those seeds as early as possible, but you also want to scatter them throughout your story. You don't want them.
I remember.
You remember. All right, go.
Okay, and it's stupid now, that very, very minor point, but I had read that you put them in early, but not just early in the book, also early in the chapter. Because
nice. Yes.
Sometimes you're going to foreshadow something midway through the book, because just like there's mini plots, and there could be other things you're foreshadowing too. And so, right. But you want that, they said, as early in the chapter as possible too.
Nice.
So that was all.
No, but that's a good point though. Like, I think that's a really good point to know, like, when to place foreshadowing is also very important in order to get it across. Like, I think that's a good point. I'm glad you remembered it. So scatter those seeds of foreshadowing. Don't put them all in one place. Leave a trail of breadcrumbs for your reader to follow, as opposed to like having them all bunched up at the very beginning of your story.
Yeah.
And that's all you've got. Which I feel like is the same for most things. Like, you don't want to bunch up a ton of dialogue and a bunch of description. You want to spread it out and like let your reader come to it eventually.
Yeah, like my chapter 5 of the Twin Saga, there was just, I crammed the entire religious history of the world of Wei into chapter 5, and I'm going, really?
Wow.
It was bad.
That's almost impressive.
It did not read impressively.
I didn't say good impressive.
True, you didn't. You're right.
And then along those lines, which is very relevant, use it in moderation. Because if you have too many hints, that'll bog down your story, give away the ending, take away from other important plot points that you have.
Yeah, it makes the story predictable, which there is nothing. I hate a predictable story.
Yeah.
It makes it boring to me. I get, like you just said, I get super excited when I watch a movie or read a book or get to the end of a series, and I'm shocked, because as writers, we often think like writers, and so we can see, I see what they're doing, and we know at the end. And
I know it drives Sydney crazy when we watch movies together, because I'm like, and then I've learned, much like you, that I do not say things unless I know she's seen it already. So
yeah, I still unfortunately blurt these things out. I'm like, oh, he's going to be his dad, and your father will look at me and go, really? And I'm like, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. And I'm not usually wrong. Sometimes though, and then that movie or book I love, because I didn't get it. I didn't catch it.
Right.
I love to be surprised. So
yeah. You had one more little point here about
foreshadowing. Oh yeah. Foreshadowing can also turn into foretelling, which you don't want. You want you foreshadow. Think of the word shadow. It's a nefarious thing. It's wayfish.
It's intangible. Yeah.
Intangible. That's a really good way to put that. You don't want to come out and go, this is going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
That's foretelling,
Right.
This storm is coming and it's going to burn this house down.
Right.
No, don't. You want to foreshadow. You're gonna tantalize your reader with these
Give
little
the ominous rumble of thunder in the distance.
yes,
And,
yes,
and tell us about how creaky the house is and that kind of stuff. And that's like,
yeah.
oh, the storm comes in and blows it down. And so you're
Yeah.
like, oh, well, I guess the house is very creaky. There's a storm in the distance. You can
Makes
see it
sense.
coming.
Yeah.
Another thing you can do, just a general tip to get foreshadowing in well is to have someone else read it. Have beta readers, or have, you and I are very good to have each other like this, where we can be like, hey, read this for me, tell me how can I add foreshadowing in, or is there enough foreshadowing, or whatever, because a fresh pair of eyes is helpful.
I think that's a very, very, very good idea. And it might even have to be, I guess, didn't we have a discussion about alpha readers, that we are more alpha readers than we are beta readers? Or
yeah, because we read it like as we write it, not after the completed draft.
You really need someone like Courtney, our true beta reader, who knows nothing about it and is reading it fresh, to be able to catch whether the foreshadowing is appropriately done. Because you and I talk about our plots, we bounce ideas off of each other. So when we are reading each other's, we already know what the other was thinking. And so we might not know if that foreshadowing is really well done or not, because we already know.
Right. Yeah.
So you want that fresh pair of eyes that you're talking about should probably be someone who doesn't know anything about the story to check that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really good point, because like you said, I know pretty much the ins and outs of what you're thinking for your plot as you write it.
Yeah.
And I think the only one that you didn't really know much about when you read it was my most recent book. So
and I loved that too. Yeah, I absolutely loved it.
Yeah.
Like I had said before, tie up every loose end. If you're going to throw some red herrings out there or some foreshadowing, tie that to something.
Yeah, definitely.
Because it's very sloppy if you don't. I mean, I think of the end of Game of Thrones, the series, not the book, the television series. There were so many plot lines and things that they alluded to that were like, oh, this is going to mean something. And it never did. They never did anything with it.
Right.
That is so frustrating to the reader or viewer.
Right.
So don't be sloppy.
Yeah.
Tie everything up. And it takes time. I mean, when you're editing, you've got to find those little loose holes. Like when you knit or weave, that hole, you've got to, darn it, you've got to stitch it up and make it right.
Yeah, definitely.
Frickin' fairies, which is my the one that I'm trying to submit right now, it is very blatant foreshadowing in the very first sentence.
Right.
The very first sentence is, if I never see another frickin' fairy again, it will be too soon. Okay, yeah. I'm telling you, right, that's a smack you over the head foreshadowing.
Very direct foreshadowing, yeah.
Yes. That's not necessarily a bad thing. Hopefully that sentence is a hook. Hopefully a reader's going to read that and go, well, I wonder why that is. Why will it be too soon? What did these fairies do to her?
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that it's not too much. Hopefully it intrigues the reader to read on. But that being said, don't overuse that blatant foreshadowing.
Right.
It veers towards that telling as opposed to showing, which we talked about last week. One of the creative writing challenges here is to make sure that you hint at it, not hit the reader over the head with it. So even though I did in my very first sentence of frickin' fairies, I still think it was an effective use of foreshadowing, because hopefully it was a hook to get them to read on.
I think so. It makes your reader ask a question like you said, why? What did they do to her? There are fairies here? Immediately you're immersed into this. Okay, so fairies exist, and what did they do? And they're obviously bad, and blah, 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 blah. So.
Yeah, I hope so. So I did come up with we all think we're foreshadowing, and aside from the fresh pair of eyes, how can you tell if you have foreshadowed or not when
Yeah.
you've written something? You think you have, but you don't know if it's too blatant or too subtle. Ask yourself these questions to see if to help you understand whether you're foreshadowing. Are there phrases about the future? Is there a change happening in the weather, the setting, or the mood? Are there objects or scenic elements that suggest something happy, sad, dangerous, exciting, etc.? Do the characters or the narrator observe something in the background that might be a hint at something to come later?
Yeah, I think those are all great questions to be asking, because I think it gets you actively thinking about where you're using foreshadowing in your work. I like those.
So that'll help you think. If you think, okay, I've foreshadowed here, that ask yourself those questions, and it'll kind of help to see whether it's done or not.
Yeah, sweet. I like that. I like that a lot. I like having those kinds of tools where you have like a list of things that you can go down and be like, yes, I can check this one off, so therefore it is. I'm a very much list oriented person.
Me too.
Yeah. So I like that.
That's all I've got. Did you have more?
No, that is all I have, except for an interview question.
Okay.
What is your favorite way to foreshadow an event in your stories?
Well, the blatant way, I started right off the bat with frickin' fairies, but I wouldn't say that's my favorite way. I think I like to use like weather and setting to, there's something about, like you said, the gray clouds, the ominous rumbling of thunder, I think that is my favorite way to add in those little clues, is with setting and maybe color. Maybe the use of color. Yeah.
Color's awesome.
Yeah.
I agree. I love using the weather as well, but I have one specific example that I can think of in one of my stories that I use, and I adore it. It's through dialogue. And one character is like, oh my God, if I'm late, then she's going to have my head. And later in the story, he does get his head cut off. So.
Oh!
And that's like a very, like it's subtle, because, obviously he's not being literal when he says it, but later in the story, he does actually end up losing his head. So that is just one of the funnest ways, I think, which sad because I actually enjoy that character, but one of the funnest ways to get across foreshadowing is like, just like just an offhand comment, and then it's like, oh, well, that happened. Okay.
Very good.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, I guess I have my outro here. I remembered to print it. Thank you all for listening. And our website is the main place to find anything and all about us. It is eatdrinkwritepodcast.com, all one word. You can contact us there, find links to our social media, which we have Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Find links to things that we've promised in the podcast, worksheets and stuff. We do have a download button as well for things that I've actually put in PDF format that you all can just download and use. Nice. Find pictures of our drinks and our food, and our email is there. Leave us a review. I've made Eat, Drink, Write face masks to give out for free to people who leave us a review. Leave us a review and then send us your address, and I'll be glad to send it to you no matter where in the world you are. Support us on our Patreon, patreon.com/EDW podcast. That would be wonderful if you could come support us. And that's all I've got. So see you next time.
Thanks, guys.